She believed she would marry a disabled millionaire. But what happened at the wedding left her. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The afternoon sky hung heavy over the quiet town of Savannah. Rain tapped softly on the windows of a small therapy clinic, where Mia Harper folded her apron and stared at the hospital bill crumpled in her hands. Her younger brother was waiting for heart surgery, and the cost written in black ink looked like a mountain she could never climb. She worked 2 jobs and still could not save enough. Every dollar went to rent, medication, and the endless list of next time maybe. Oh, when the clinic closed, she stepped into the drizzle, her worn sneakers soaking through within seconds. A black car stopped beside her. The window lowered, revealing a man in a dark suit and calm gray eyes. "Miss Harper?" he asked. "Mr. Hale would like to see you. It concerns an offer that may change your life." Mia hesitated, the wind biting through her thin jacket. "Who is Mr. Hale?" "The one who owns this hospital," the man replied simply. She followed the car through winding streets until it stopped before a lakeside mansion. The air smelled of cedar and rain. Inside, everything gleamed glass, marble, silence. At the far end of the room sat a man in a wheelchair. His presence filled the space even without standing. His hair was dark, his jaw sharp, his posture straight despite the chair. His name was Adrian Hale, a business magnate once known for his brilliance, now rumored to be broken by a car crash that had left his legs paralyzed. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." Mia obeyed, her palms damp. Adrian studied her quietly before speaking. "I know about your brother's medical condition. I also know you need help." Her heart skipped. "How do you—" "I read every file that crosses my foundation," he interrupted. "I have a proposition for you." A lawyer stepped forward, placing a folder on the table between them. Inside, neat pages were clipped with a silver pin. The title read, "Marriage Agreement." Mia blinked in disbelief. "You want me to marry you?" Adrian's tone was steady, cold. "For legal reasons only. My inheritance will be transferred to charity unless I am married by the end of this month. I need a wife on paper. In return, your brother's surgery will be fully covered, and you will receive financial security for your family. After 6 months, we go our separate ways." Her pulse thundered. "You do not even know me." "I know enough," he said simply. "You are honest. You are desperate. You have nothing to lose." For a moment, the only sound was the rain against the tall windows. Mia looked at him, this man in a wheelchair who spoke with the composure of a judge handing down a sentence. Her first instinct was to refuse. The idea felt absurd, even humiliating. But then she pictured her brother, pale on the hospital bed, whispering that he wanted to see the ocean again. Her throat tightened. "And if I say yes?" Adrian leaned back, eyes unreadable. "Then we sign the contract tomorrow morning." The lawyer nodded, closing the folder with a soft click. The echo filled the room like a verdict. When Mia left the mansion, the rain had stopped, but her world felt heavier than ever. Every step toward home was weighed down by a question she could not escape. Was she saving her family or selling her soul? She looked back once. Through the wide window, she saw Adrian still sitting by the fire, motionless, staring into the flames, as if seeing something she could not. The glow painted his face in gold and shadow, half human, half myth. And though she did not know it yet, that single choice to sign her name under his was the moment her life would change forever. That night, Mia could not sleep. The sound of rain against the small apartment roof echoed like a clock she could not silence. Her brother, Noah, slept in the next room, his breathing shallow, the oxygen machine humming beside his bed. The glow of the monitor cast soft light over his face. He looked peaceful, unaware of how close their world was to collapsing. Mia sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug of cold tea. Bills were stacked in front of her, some already marked "Final Notice." Her paycheck from the clinic barely covered rent, and the surgery estimate from St. Mary's Hospital looked like a number from another universe. She had already sold her mother's old car, her jewelry, even her paintings that once gave her hope. There was nothing left to trade. Her best friend Clara had told her once, "You are the strongest person I know." But strength did not pay hospital bills. Strength did not buy medicine. It only kept you standing when the floor was falling away. She replayed Adrian Hale's words in her mind. 6 months. Legal only. Your brother's surgery covered. He had said it without emotion, like a man negotiating another business deal. And yet, when he mentioned her brother, there had been a flicker in his eyes, brief, almost human. What kind of man offers marriage like a transaction? What kind of woman would say yes? The thought made her stomach twist. She had never believed love could be bought, but desperation was a louder voice than pride. The clock on the wall struck midnight. Noah coughed, a soft sound that made her heart seize. She hurried to his side, adjusted the tube, and whispered, "It is all right. I am here." He stirred, but did not wake. Mia sat beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You are going to get better," she whispered. "I promise." The words trembled in her throat because she did not know how to make them true. When dawn came, the rain had stopped. The city outside the window gleamed with that soft golden light that appears only after a storm. Mia stood by the window, watching people hurry to work, carrying coffee cups and briefcases, living lives untouched by hers. A knock came at the door. She opened it to find the same man from the night before, the driver in the dark suit, now holding an envelope. "Mr. Hale asked me to deliver this," he said. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The top line read, "Marriage contract, revised terms." At the bottom, Adrian Hale's signature was already in place. All she had to do was sign. Her pulse raced. The words blurred before her eyes, but one line stood out. Payment to be issued immediately upon signing. Medical transfer arranged with St. Mary's Hospital. She looked up at the driver. "If I sign this, my brother's surgery will happen?" He nodded. "Within the week." The room seemed to tilt around her. Her mother's voice echoed faintly in memory. "Mia, never sell your soul, no matter how dark it gets." But this was not about her soul. It was about saving the only family she had left. Her hands trembled as she picked up a pen from the table. She hesitated, staring at the blank space beside Adrian Hale's name. For a moment, she imagined his face again, calm, unreadable, the firelight glinting in his gray eyes. Then she signed. The pen pressed through the paper from how hard her hand shook. She set it down, exhaled, and whispered into the silence. "For Noah." Outside, the first bus of the morning rumbled down the street. Life continued as if nothing had changed. But for Mia Harper, everything had. The clock on the wall ticked softly behind her, marking the beginning of a deal that would change not only her brother's fate but her own. The following morning, the rain returned soft and gray, like a curtain between Mia and the rest of the world. She arrived at the mansion just after 8, her hair pulled back, the signed contract folded neatly in her purse. The housekeeper, an older woman with kind eyes, led her into a room that smelled faintly of cedar and paper. On the desk sat the same silver folder she had seen before, now waiting for her signature to be confirmed. Adrian Hale was already there. He wore a charcoal suit, crisp and immaculate, though he remained in the wheelchair by the window. Morning light spilled over his shoulders, glinting off the steel rims of the chair. He looked up briefly, his expression unreadable. "Miss Harper," he said evenly, "you have decided." Mia nodded, trying to steady her voice. "Yes, I have signed." The lawyer checked the paper, nodded once, and turned to Adrian. "All in order, Mr. Hale." Adrian's gaze met hers for a moment that felt longer than it was. "Then let us begin." He motioned to the table where a second document waited. The lawyer placed a pen before her, heavier than any she had ever held. The ink inside gleamed black as night. Adrian's hand rested beside the page, the veins along his wrist stark against his skin. Mia lowered her eyes to the contract. The words blurred as she read, "No emotional entanglement. No interference with personal matters. Attendance required at public events. 6 months duration. Payment upon conclusion." Her breath caught at the last clause, payment for service. That was what this was, a transaction, written and sealed. She lifted the pen again and signed the final line. Adrian's voice broke the silence. "You will move in this evening. A driver will assist you. Mrs. Porter will help you settle. The wedding ceremony will be private this afternoon at the courthouse. Her heart stuttered. This afternoon? He looked straight ahead. It must be legal today. There are deadlines I cannot miss. She swallowed the protest rising in her throat. I understand. He studied her for a long second before speaking again. There are a few conditions you should know. The lawyer handed her another sheet, shorter, handwritten in neat ink. Condition 1. Public affection when required. Condition 2. Maintain appearance of genuine marriage. Condition 3. No romantic expectations. Condition 4. Complete discretion. Mia set the paper down, her hands trembling slightly. You really have thought of everything. Adrian's lips curved faintly, but not into a smile. I am a man who plans ahead. Chaos does not suit me. The lawyer gathered the documents and stepped out, leaving the two of them alone. The rain against the glass grew louder. For the first time, Mia noticed a photograph on Adrian's desk, two young men beside a small plane, one clearly Adrian, the other a stranger. Both smiled, carefree. The edges of the photo were worn, as though handled too often. Adrian followed her gaze. That was before the accident, he said quietly. Before everything changed. I am sorry, she murmured. He looked back at her, his tone even again. Do not be. Pity does not suit you either. Mia said nothing. She could feel the wall between them, invisible but solid. By noon, she stood before the courthouse steps in a pale gray dress that the housekeeper had pressed for her. The air smelled of wet pavement and magnolia. A single bouquet of white lilies waited inside the small chapel room. Adrian sat near the altar, his posture impeccable, his expression calm. The officiant cleared his throat. We are gathered here today to witness the union of Adrian Hale and Mia Harper. Union. The word felt too fragile for what they were about to do. Adrian repeated his vows with practiced precision, his voice clear and steady. When it was Mia's turn, her throat tightened. I do, she whispered. The officiant smiled faintly. By the power vested in me, by the state of Georgia, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Applause did not follow. There were only 3 witnesses, the lawyer, the housekeeper, and the driver who waited outside. Adrian turned his chair slightly toward her. Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Hale. She managed a nod. Thank you, Mr. Hale. He extended his hand politely. She hesitated, then took it. His grip was firm, his skin warm, despite the coldness of his words. When they returned to the mansion, Mrs. Porter led her through polished hallways into a guest suite overlooking the garden. You will be staying here, the woman said softly. Dinner is at 7. No. The room was larger than her entire apartment, cream walls, a canopy bed, fresh flowers on the dresser. Mia placed her small suitcase on the chair, feeling out of place among the luxury. Through the window, she saw Adrian in the courtyard, speaking to a man in a suit. His movements were precise, controlled, though every so often his hand brushed the wheel of his chair with a quiet frustration. She turned away, unbuttoning her coat. The contract lay in her purse, folded neatly, its edges pressing against her palm like a silent reminder of the choice she had made. When the clock struck 7, she entered the dining room. The table stretched nearly 12 feet, candles flickering at both ends. Adrian sat at the far side, the lawyer gone, the staff moving quietly. I trust the room is satisfactory, he said. It is beautiful, she answered softly. Good, he replied, cutting into his food with the precision of a surgeon. They ate mostly in silence. Only the sound of silver against porcelain filled the air. Halfway through the meal, he said without looking up, Tomorrow morning, you will meet with my assistant. There are public appearances to prepare for. You will be given appropriate attire. Try to look the part. She wanted to ask, what part? But held her tongue. When dinner ended, Adrian nodded once. You may retire. We have a long 6 months ahead. Mia stood, her heart heavy. As she walked back through the marble hall, she realized that every step deeper into this house felt like walking into another world, one where love was a clause in a contract, and her signature had already decided her fate. The next few days unfolded like a strange dream that Mia could not quite wake from. Every morning began at 8 sharp. Mrs. Porter would bring her a list of schedules and fittings, and Adrian's assistant, a tall woman named Elise, would arrive with garment bags and folders of event details. "Mr. Hale prefers elegance without extravagance," Elise said one morning, pulling a pale blue gown from its hanger. "Something that photographs well, but does not outshine him." Mia nodded, though she felt like a mannequin being dressed for a role she did not audition for. Each day was a lesson how to walk beside Adrian's wheelchair without drawing attention, how to smile for cameras without letting nerves show, how to answer questions about a marriage that was built on paper instead of affection. There were moments when she almost forgot the contract. In the quiet hours before dawn, she could hear Adrian playing piano in the music room, soft melodies that drifted through the house like whispers. They were careful, hesitant, the kind of song someone plays when words have run out. Once, she stood outside the door and listened until the music stopped. That afternoon, Elise announced that Adrian wanted her to join a charity dinner at the Hale Foundation headquarters. "It will be your first public appearance as Mrs. Hale," she said. "Every photograph, every sentence, every glance will matter." By 7 o'clock, the driver escorted them to the downtown venue. The hall glittered with chandeliers, the air heavy with perfume and polite laughter. Cameras flashed the moment they entered. Adrian greeted the board members with the ease of a man used to commanding a room, his calm presence turning heads even from his chair. Mia walked beside him, her heart pounding, her smile carefully held in place. She could feel eyes following her, the curious, the judgmental, the envious. When a journalist asked how they met, Adrian spoke before she could. "At the rehabilitation clinic," he said smoothly. "She was helping others long before she ever met me. I am lucky she agreed to share her life with mine." The reporter smiled, satisfied. The crowd murmured approval. Mia forced herself to breathe. His words sounded genuine, almost tender. For a fleeting moment, she almost believed them. Later, as the speeches ended, Adrian leaned slightly toward her. "You handled yourself well," he said. "Thank you," she answered quietly. "I was terrified." "Oh." His eyes softened, just for an instant. When they returned home that night, the house was silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Mia lingered by the grand staircase while Adrian wheeled himself toward the study. "Mr. Hale," she said suddenly. He stopped and turned. "You did not have to defend me back there." "I did not defend you," he replied. "I told the truth. You have earned your place here, even if the world does not understand why." She wanted to ask what he meant, but he was already moving away. The following days passed in a rhythm of lessons and appearances. She learned how to read the subtle signals when Adrian was in pain, when he was restless, when his silence meant more than his words. Beneath his cold precision, there was something deeply human, though buried beneath years of restraint. One morning, while helping Mrs. Porter arrange flowers in the foyer, Mia glanced through the window and saw Adrian in the garden. The chair had been left near the fountain, and he was standing holding onto the rail with both hands, trembling but upright. For a moment she froze, unsure whether to call out. His jaw tightened, every muscle in his arms trembling as he forced his weight onto his legs. Then he fell back into the chair, gasping, angry at himself. Mia rushed outside, but he stopped her with a raised hand. "Do not pity me," he said, his voice low. "I will walk again, just not today." She met his gaze. "I do not pity you," she said. "I believe you." Something in his eyes shifted surprise, maybe even gratitude. Then he turned away, his tone calm again. "You should change for dinner. We have guests arriving soon." As she walked back toward the house, the sound of the fountain followed her, mingling with the quiet hum of evening. For the first time since she signed that contract, Mia wondered if there was more to Adrian Hale than the terms written in ink. The following week arrived with the kind of tension that clung to the air like static. Mia had been in the Hale mansion for just under 1 month, and she was slowly learning that appearances were another form of armor in this world. Adrian had built his fortune on control, and control demanded perfection. That Friday evening, the grand ballroom shimmered with golden light as the staff prepared for the annual Hale Foundation Gala. It was the first event Adrian would host since his accident, and the whispers in the business circle were already cruel questions about his health, his legacy, and his mysterious young wife. Mia stood at the top of the staircase, her gown a deep shade of emerald that matched the flecks in her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as Mrs. Porter adjusted the clasp of her necklace. Down below, cameras flashed through the glass doors, and the sound of arriving cars echoed across the driveway. When Adrian entered the room, conversations stilled for a heartbeat. He wore a tailored black suit, his wheelchair polished to a mirror sheen. His posture was perfect, his composure unshaken. Yet as his gaze found Mia's, a flicker of warmth crossed his face, quick, quiet, and gone before anyone else could notice. He wheeled closer and whispered, "Stay near me tonight. They will test you." "Test me?" she repeated softly. "The board. The donors. Everyone here measures worth in words and posture. Do not give them a reason to see weakness." She nodded, forcing a calm smile. Together, they greeted guests, posed for photos, and accepted compliments that often carried hidden barbs. Halfway through the evening, a journalist raised a glass and said loudly, "Mr. Hale, some say your marriage is unconventional. Care to comment?" The crowd murmured, hungry for drama. Adrian's lips curved faintly. "Unconventional," he echoed. "Yes, perhaps. But the heart does not take advice from the headlines." Mia felt every gaze shift to her. Her pulse hammered, but she remembered his words' control demanded perfection. She leaned closer and said clearly, "He is right. Sometimes love finds us when we least expect it, and not everyone has the courage to understand that." The crowd fell silent, then applause broke out. Cameras flashed. Someone laughed softly, impressed. Adrian turned to her, his expression unreadable, but his voice carried quiet approval. "Well done, Mrs. Hale." Later, as the orchestra played a soft waltz, he gestured toward the dance floor. "Go ahead," he said. "Enjoy the music." "I cannot leave you here alone," she replied. "You are not leaving me," he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. "You are representing us." So she stepped onto the floor. The lights shimmered across the marble as she moved among the guests. For the first time, she felt like she belonged in the scene, not as an actress pretending, but as herself. When she glanced back, Adrian was watching her, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. The night ended quietly. The guests departed with their polished smiles and empty compliments. When the last car disappeared through the gates, the house fell still again. Mia helped Adrian back to his study, where the fire still glowed faintly in the hearth. "You saved the evening," he said finally. "They wanted to humiliate us. You turned it into admiration." "I only told the truth," she answered. He looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe you did." For the first time, he smiled. Not the polite smile of a man used to cameras, but something genuine, almost fragile. The flicker of warmth between them lingered, unspoken but undeniable. When she left the room that night, the echo of his words followed her up the staircase. Somewhere deep inside, something had shifted. The marriage that began as a contract was no longer just an agreement on paper. Something real was beginning to grow, something neither of them had planned for, but both could feel taking root beneath the surface. The gala had ended days ago, but its echo lingered inside the mansion like a memory that refused to fade. The newspapers called it the return of Adrian Hale, praising his composure and the devotion of his young wife. Mia tried not to read the headlines, but Mrs. Porter would leave the papers neatly folded on the breakfast table each morning, as if to remind her that her world was no longer private. Adrian had become quieter since that night. His schedule was filled with board meetings and therapy sessions. He worked from the study most days, the sound of his voice drifting through the hall as he dictated letters or made calls. Still, every evening, she would see him by the window, staring out at the gardens long after the lights went out. One evening, as the rain whispered against the glass, Mia found him there again. The firelight cast soft shadows across his face. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "You are not resting," she said gently. He turned the wheelchair toward her. "I rest when I have earned it." "You have earned it 1,000 times," she replied. "But you do not allow yourself peace." His jaw tightened. "Peace is not given, it is taken." She hesitated, then moved closer. "You speak like a man who does not believe in healing." He looked up at her. "Healing is for those who can forget. I remember everything." The room grew quiet except for the crackle of the fire. For the first time, she saw more than the calm businessman or the strict employer. There was grief behind his eyes, a heaviness that no contract could name. "Tell me about the accident," she said softly. He was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and steady. "It happened 2 years ago. My brother was the pilot. We were celebrating a deal, flying home at night. The storm came fast. He made a mistake. I survived. He did not." Mia's breath caught. "I am sorry." Adrian's eyes did not waver. "I was angry for surviving. I still am." She stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking. "Maybe surviving means you still have something left to do." He looked at her, truly looked, as though hearing the words for the first time. Then, almost imperceptibly, his expression softened. "You speak as if you understand." "I do," she said quietly. "I have lost too." He said nothing, but the silence between them felt different, no longer cold, but alive with understanding. After that night, something changed. Adrian began asking her to join him for breakfast, to accompany him during therapy sessions, to walk with him through the garden paths while he practiced standing between the metal rails. His progress was slow, painful, but relentless. One morning, he managed to take 3 steps with the help of the therapist before sitting back down, sweat glistening on his forehead. He looked up at Mia, and for the first time since she met him, he laughed, a quiet, genuine laugh that startled them both. "You see?" she said, smiling. "Peace can be earned after all." He shook his head, still catching his breath. "Not peace, maybe just hope." Their days found a rhythm. They talked more, laughed sometimes, and the mansion felt less like a cage. The piano room filled with music again, hesitant at first, then steady. Mia would sit nearby, sketching quietly while he played. One afternoon, as he played a soft melody, he glanced toward her and said, "You make this place feel alive again." Her pencil paused. "It was never dead," she said. "It just needed light." Oh, he held her gaze, and for a long moment, the air between them carried something unspoken, tender, fragile, and undeniably real. When the song ended, neither moved. The contract might have started their story, but now, the lines of that agreement felt less like boundaries and more like the frame of something new, a life they were building without realizing it. By early spring, the Hale mansion had begun to feel less like a museum and more like a home. The gardens bloomed again, the air filled with the scent of magnolia and wet soil. Mia had been living there for nearly 3 months, and the boundaries between duty and affection were slowly blurring. Each morning, she helped Adrian with his therapy. He could now stand for several minutes without support, though each step came with visible strain. She would walk beside him, her hand hovering near his arm, ready but never intrusive. He hated pity, and she respected that. One evening, after a particularly long day of training, Adrian invited her to dinner on the terrace. The sunset painted the lake in colors of gold and coral. For once, he looked at peace. "You should be proud," she said. "You have come farther than anyone thought you could." He smiled faintly. "Including myself." He took a slow breath. "Mia, I have not thanked you properly. You have been more than I expected." "Do not thank me," she said. "I just did what anyone would do." No," he replied. Not everyone would have stayed. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world went still. The sound of water lapping against the dock filled the quiet space between them. She felt her heartbeat rise, unsure if it was admiration, affection, or something deeper that she had not dared to name. But peace, in their world, never lasted long. The next day, as Adrian attended a board meeting downtown, Mia was arranging flowers in the hall when she overheard 2 members of the staff whispering near the stairs. "It was Julian Hale," one of them said. "He is furious. He was supposed to inherit everything, but the marriage ruined that." "Do you think he knows it is fake?" the other whispered. Mia froze. Her hands tightened around the vase. Julian, the cousin Adrian, rarely mentioned. She had met him only once, a man with a smile too quick and eyes that watched everything. That evening, when Adrian returned, she found him sitting by the fire, a letter open on his lap. His face was unreadable. "What happened?" she asked. He looked up slowly. "Julian has filed a petition with the board, claiming this marriage is a fraud, meant to manipulate the inheritance clause. Mia's stomach sank. He cannot prove that. Adrian's tone was steady but grim. He might not have to. The board is convening tomorrow. They have the power to suspend my control of the foundation until the investigation is complete. She moved closer. Then tell them the truth. Tell them She stopped herself, realizing she did not know what truth to offer. That their marriage had begun as a contract? That she now cared for him in ways no contract could define? He saw the conflict in her face. I will handle it, he said softly. But there is something you should know. He handed her the letter. At the bottom was Julian's signature, and beneath it, a single line that made her blood run cold. Evidence forthcoming. What does he have? She whispered. Adrian's voice hardened. I do not know. But whatever it is, he plans to destroy us with it. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with tension. Reporters gathered outside the gates, their cameras waiting. Inside, Adrian dressed in silence, his movements controlled, his expression composed. As he adjusted his cufflinks, Mia stepped behind him. You do not have to face this alone. He turned to her, his voice low. I started this. I will finish it. She shook her head. You are not alone anymore. For a brief moment, something flickered in his eyes, fear, gratitude, love, but then it was gone. He nodded once, and together, they left the house, stepping into the storm that waited beyond the gates. Neither of them knew it yet, but this confrontation would decide not only Adrian's empire, but the truth about the bond that had quietly grown between them. The boardroom of the Hale Foundation was a place built for power. The ceiling rose high above polished mahogany walls, and the long glass table reflected the faces of 12 board members seated in stiff silence. Cameras from the press waited outside, their lights flashing through the windows like distant lightning. Adrian sat at the head of the table, calm but pale. The weight of the past weeks hung heavy on his shoulders. Beside him sat Mia, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She had begged to accompany him, and though he had hesitated, he finally agreed. Whatever happens, he had said, stay quiet until I ask you to speak. At the far end of the table stood Julian Hale. His smile was smooth, his voice confident. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we are here because this foundation deserves transparency. My cousin's so-called marriage has raised serious questions about the integrity of our leadership. I have gathered evidence that this union was arranged purely for inheritance gain. He held up a folder thick with papers. Here are the financial transfers, the contract signed weeks before the ceremony, and the lawyer's affidavit confirming payment upon marriage. Murmurs spread across the table. The board members turned toward Adrian, some with sympathy, others with quiet judgment. Adrian's voice remained steady. The contract was legal, yes. I never denied that. But what began as necessity has become something neither of us expected. Julian scoffed. A convenient claim, considering the deadline on your inheritance. Do you expect us to believe this was love? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Adrian's hands tightened on the armrest of his chair. For a moment, he looked as if he might stay silent. Then he said quietly, I did not believe in love anymore. Until her. The room fell still. Julian laughed under his breath. Touching words, cousin. But words will not change the law. Before Adrian could respond, Mia rose to her feet. Her voice was clear, trembling only slightly. You are right, Mr. Hale. The law cannot measure love. But it can see truth. She turned to the board members. I came into this arrangement because my brother needed surgery we could not afford. I did not marry Adrian for wealth. I married him because he offered help when no one else would. And in return, I gave him honesty. Whatever this started as, it is real now. Anyone who has seen us together knows that. The chairman frowned. Mrs. Hale, are you admitting this marriage began as a contract? Yes, she said firmly. And I am not ashamed, because from that contract grew respect, compassion, and something far stronger than any legal term could define. Julian's smirk faltered. That is a lovely speech, but it changes nothing. Adrian reached for the table, pressing a small remote. A large screen behind him flickered to life. It showed video footage from the therapy wing at the Hale Rehabilitation Center. Adrian, standing for the first time, Mia beside him, cheering softly. Then another clip appeared. her reading to patients, volunteering hours beyond her role. "These are not business transactions," Adrian said. "They are moments of truth." She reminded me what this foundation was built for, to give people a reason to stand again. Silence filled the room. The chairman leaned forward. "Mr. Hale, the board will review the evidence, but from what I see, you have honored both your contract and your mission. This meeting is adjourned." Julian's face darkened, but he said nothing. When the session ended, reporters flooded the corridor. Adrian and Mia walked side by side through the flashing lights. The noise was deafening, questions flying from every direction, but Adrian paused at the steps. He turned to the cameras, his voice strong. "The truth is simple. I may have started this marriage with conditions, but I will end it with conviction. I stand today because of her." "Oh?" Gasps rippled through the crowd as he took a single, careful step forward unaided. The cameras clicked wildly. Mia's eyes filled with tears. He looked at her, his voice barely above a whisper. It was never just about walking again. It was about learning how to live. And in that moment, the headlines that once doubted them began to write themselves anew, not as scandal, but as redemption. Spring melted into summer, and with it came a new calm that settled over the Hale estate. The scandal that once surrounded Adrian and Mia faded as quickly as it had erupted. The newspapers that once doubted their marriage now called it a story of courage and second chances. The Hale Foundation's work expanded across the state, funding new therapy centers and scholarships in Adrian's brother's name. In the weeks after the board hearing, Adrian continued his rehabilitation with renewed determination. Each morning, he practiced standing longer, walking farther. Mia remained beside him, steady as ever, matching his steps with patience and quiet encouragement. The day he took his first unaided walk down the garden path, the sun broke through the clouds, as if blessing every stride. When he reached the fountain, she clapped softly. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled, breathing hard. "No," he said, "we did it." That evening, the mansion glowed with soft candlelight. The staff had arranged a small dinner to celebrate his recovery. But when Mia entered the dining room, she noticed something different. The table was set for two, the rest of the room empty. In the center stood a single white lily, her favorite flower. Adrian was waiting near the piano, standing tall without support. He wore a simple suit, no wheelchair in sight. "You look surprised," he said, smiling faintly. "I am," she admitted. "You are not supposed to be on your feet this long." "I have been practicing," he replied. "For this." "I?" He reached into his pocket and drew out a small velvet box. The light caught on the ring inside, simple, elegant, and unmistakably real. "Mia Harper," he said softly, "I once asked you to marry me for all the wrong reasons. Today I am asking again for the only reason that matters." Her breath caught, tears rising before she could stop them. "Adrian, this time," he continued, "there is no contract, no condition, no deadline. Just love. Just us." "Oh." The room seemed to hold its breath as she stepped closer. Her hands trembled when she touched his face. "You already had my heart long before you realized it," she whispered. He slid the ring onto her finger. "Then keep mine with it." They kissed slow, certain, without fear of what came next. Outside, the lake shimmered beneath the moonlight, the same water that had reflected her doubts months ago. Now it mirrored only hope. Weeks later, they held a quiet ceremony at the garden terrace, surrounded by close friends, the staff who had become family, and a handful of children from the foundation. There were no reporters, no grand announcements, only laughter and sunlight and vows that needed no proof. As the music played, Mia turned to Adrian. "Do you ever think about the first day we met?" He laughed softly. "Every day. I offered you a contract, and you gave me a life instead." She leaned against his shoulder. "Then let us promise one more thing, never to forget how far we have come." He nodded, looking out over the blooming magnolias. "No contracts this time," he said. "Just forever." And so, in the house that once echoed with silence and pain, there was music again, steady, bright, and full of life. The story that began as an arrangement ended not with signatures, but with love that had been earned, healed, and made real. For Adrian and Mia Hale, forever no longer sounded like a promise. It sounded like home,